The soldier was horrified to discover that the enemy was finishing off the survivors on the battlefield. Witnessing such a cruel scene, Doss could only lower his body as much as possible. Suddenly, he heard a cry for help. A wounded comrade was buried in the dirt, calling out to him. With the enemy drawing closer, Doss hurried to his comrade's side, warning him not to move. Then he covered his comrade's body with soil and turned around to drag another body over himself. Soon the enemy arrived nearby. They held their breath, afraid of being discovered. At that moment, an enemy soldier stopped, turned to look at the body on Doss, raised his bayonet, and stabbed down fiercely. After the enemy finally left, Doss pushed the body off himself. Fortunately, he had not been stabbed. Doss quickly dug out his wounded comrade and continued his rescue. The soldiers in the camp watched as one wounded man after another was carried down the cliff. They did not know that the coward they had once mocked was now single-handedly saving dozens of lives.
Please, Lord, help me get one more.
Doss lost count of how many he had saved. He repeatedly carried his comrades and sent them down the cliff. Though his whole body trembled and his hands were raw and bloodied from the ropes, he never gave up.
Please, help me get one more.
Until the next morning, when the enemy began to hunt down the surviving soldiers again. The sergeant, wounded in both legs, felt hopeless inside. At that moment, a figure appeared in the distance. It was Doss. Fortunately, the bullet only grazed his helmet. Then he deliberately exposed his position to draw the enemy's fire. The sergeant understood and began to fight back. Doss placed the sergeant on a blanket and dragged him toward the cliff edge. He ran forward recklessly, offering his back to the sergeant amid the hail of bullets. They reached the cliff edge, and Doss skillfully tied the sergeant with a rope and kicked him down. Holding onto the rope tightly, even though the enemy was right behind him, Doss never let go. After the sergeant was rescued, Doss immediately grabbed another body and leapt off the cliff. The approaching enemy fired at him instantly, but the soldiers in the camp were ready. Under their intense fire, the enemy retreated. The soldiers in the camp gathered around Doss, looking at him with admiration. The soldier they once called a coward had now become a hero in everyone's hearts.